All right. So, um, again, didn't plan on going live here for this, but I think something dawned on me. I'm gonna close my window. No distractions. I think something dawned on me recently was, I'm making all these shorts and sharing my thoughts during my faith journey, but nobody really knows me well enough to say like, hey, where did those thoughts come from? You know, what kind of experiences did you have? And I've always said, like, I'd love to share my testimony. And I think God's been placing it on my heart, like, Josh, what are you waiting for? Share it now. And I think it would probably be a lot more comfortable if I was not doing a YouTube live. If I had the chance to record it and edit it, it'd probably be a lot smoother. So bear with me. I may ramble, but I think I wanted to be vulnerable. Um, I didn't want to have any notes. I didn't want to have anything to guide me. I just wanted the Holy Spirit to kind of help shape this conversation. Um, so yeah. So if you join, I appreciate it. If you watch it later, I appreciate it. I think what I'm learning during this walk is we all have stories. We all have pasts. Um, and mine's probably not so much different than yours. It may have different variables, um, but I think sharing with others can go a long way. I think being vulnerable and being present, you don't have to have all the words or the best script or best lighting, best camera. You just have to be present. And I want to be obedient. So here I am. So I was born, I'm 43 now. So I was born in 82. Um, Small town in Ohio. I think it's known probably for basketball, especially after this year. I was born in Miami of Ohio. Um, my parents were rather young when they had me. My mom was 19, um, and I don't really know much about my father because he left when I was around 2 years old. So, um, being a 19-year-old and basically by yourself, my mom had to make some tough decisions. And what I can recall through my life and through stories of others is um, she had to get away from my father. So she decided to move to California when I was rather young. I remember living with my grandmother. And, not only did she have to get away from my father, she needed to establish herself and kind of get a safe space for her and I to try again. Um, so she goes to California, live with my grandma. And, I don't know at what age this happened, but I do remember my mom coming to visit during Thanksgiving. And, um, I'd lived with my grandma for a while at this point, and maybe a year or something like that, and or two. And my mom's comes to visit, and during that visit, my grandmother passed away with my mom in the car. And you know that was traumatizing for her and for me as well to see that at such a young age. So here's my mom trying to get her bearings about her and get a place for us to live in California. She comes home to visit, and then she's hit with this reality that those plans are going to have to change again. And we go to California after dealing with that heartbreak. And um, during the time, I had some medical issues. I had a tumor in my abdomen that I was in the hospital for. Again, had to be traumatizing for my mother. She's young, she has a child, she's trying to establish herself, and her mother passes away, her support system is gone. And then to have your child have something as scary as a tumor. And luckily, by the grace of God, it was benign. But at the time, I couldn't imagine. I have children now, and if they get a bloody nose, it's like my heart drops. So I couldn't imagine how my mother was feeling. we're out there for a period of time, and my mother was dating, and it just seemed like she left one situation and got into another one, and she met a man that was quite abusive. I do remember that. I remember um, him physically assaulting my mom, and me trying to do everything I can as like a 6 or 7 year old to try to stop this. And so I'm 7 years old, and it's just been trauma after trauma after trauma. Um, and I think after that, I couldn't tell you the timeline, but we do go live with my aunt and uncle, uh, and that's where I guess the seeds of faith began to get planted to my heart. We go to a small church in New Lebanon, Ohio, and I just remember this sense of community and love, and I felt safe. And I didn't understand a lot about the Bible at the time, but I started to understand what love looked like. And growing up um, with my cousins, because I was an only child, it was great. It was great to have that somebody that's around your age that likes the same things that you do, and you get to go out and ride bikes and motorbikes and go into the woods and go fishing. And it's just a normal childhood at that point. Go to Americana amusement park, for any of you park nuts out there. Used to be here in Ohio. It was a great time. My mom met a man that would soon become my stepfather. He's that was the first time in my life, besides my uncles, that I had a male figure in my life that really like showed me responsibility and respect, and he just showed me what a man was supposed to look like. The Lord blessed my mother with him, and I'm lucky that I had him in my life. And then through out high school, I wouldn't say I did what normal kids did. Maybe I did. I don't know. I started drinking and going to parties and playing music and getting in bands and chasing girls. And I was kind of like, I'm not going to say that my mother and my stepfather didn't um, love us or set boundaries, but I did feel like I had a little bit more freedom in that household. Um, and I think I started to pick up some bad habits during that time, where I could just go do what I want. I got a job, made my own money, and um, started to make some bad choices. And I could see that in myself. So in my senior year of high school, um, I decided I was going to join the military. So I joined the Army right out of high school. Go to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training, and I did not like the Army at all. I did not like authority. I didn't like structure. I didn't like being told when I had to go to bed or wake up or any of that stuff. So I tried everything I could to get out of the Army. The Army would not let me do that, which is good because I needed that. I needed that structure. I needed responsibilities and things of that nature. So it turned out good in the end, I think. I finished my advanced training in the military. I get stationed in Fort Hood, Texas. And this was around September, when September 11th happened, 2001. And I just had a feeling like, this is not going to turn out good. Obviously that the country's in a difficult situation, but being a young kid, you only think about yourself. How's this going to affect me? And it did. I got deployed to Iraq in 2004, and that's kind of when my life started to take a downward trajectory, I guess. April 4th, 2004 was one of the worst days of my life. It's known as Black Sunday, where my unit was in Solder City and we got attacked, and we lost a lot of soldiers that day and a lot of wounded. And, I'm not going to get into details there, but that was hard. That was hard. I already didn't want to do the army. I didn't want to um, do all of these things, and then to be a young kid and get um, get deployed like that and see the things that I saw. Um, that was really hard to go through. Uh, I think I missed a part. I got married right before that deployment, and I think we were only married like 6 months before I got deployed. And during that deployment, after all of this stuff is happening, and constant combat and trying to stay alive every day, and mortar rounds, you never know when they're going to go off. My wife at the time told me that she no longer wanted to be married. So, where were you? I'm dealing with the divorce. I'm trying to stay alive. I'm dealing with loss. I'm dealing with combat. And I've also, you know, grew up without a father for a portion of my life. I was separated from her, and there was loss in her life and our lives. And it was roadblock after roadblock and bump after bump. Um, so I get out of the military, join the National Guard here in Ohio. I start making music to try to, I guess, stay active, keep my mind active. I'm chasing after something to feel validated. So I started making music and playing shows and meeting new people. And again, the bad habits started to creep back in. I started trying to numb myself with alcohol and prescription medications, and just because I was fighting the demons from my time in Iraq, because I never really addressed those. Um, that was really hard to go through. And at this time, I'm not walking with God. If anything, I'm walking further away from Him, and I'm just trying to fill any void with something. Maybe this week it's alcohol, next week it's gambling, this month it's whatever, right? And I keep spiraling and losing in every avenue of my life, every relationship that I had. Either it was me being angry or jealous or needing control. All of these things started to creep in, and they creeped in really fast. And it was like debilitating. And I meet my wife now, when I moved to Columbus, with one of my friends from high school. And I would love to tell you that things turned around then, but they didn't. You know, Looking back, I can see like God, He blessed me with a patient woman. Um, I was never abusive or, you know, physical like that in any way, but mentally, yeah, I could take it out on people. You know, all the trauma that I've experienced that I never dealt with, I would take it out on people. If something didn't go my way, well, I'm going to tell you about it. You didn't say something the right way, I'm going to tell you about it. Um, if stressors popped up in my life, I didn't go ask for help. I didn't talk to my wife about it. I just drank and drank some more. And, um, you know, she was supportive during these times. She was patient. And I can say that now looking back, but at the time I was so self absorbed and self centered and narcissistic that it's like, hey, look at me. I have all these problems. Let's not worry about what's going on in your life. Let's worry about what's going on in my life. You know, um, Here's all the things that I've went through. I don't have time to deal with your things. And I start putting myself in this tiny little box that just kept getting smaller and smaller. And I thought, maybe a change of careers, because at the time I was working on generators around the state of Ohio. And I was like, this is not exciting anymore. I've always had a passion for, creating or fixing things. Um, and I've always been in the electrical trade. So I was like, electrical mechanical engineering, that sounds great. So go back to school for that. Um, During the time, I'm still pushing all of my past demons away, not dealing with them. Um, I get a really good job with a German automation company after I finish school. Um, Start climbing the corporate ladder, from technician to team lead to maintenance manager to site manager. And I'm going to Germany and I'm doing all these things. And during this time, I was still an angry person at home. I felt I was, like I was successful in my professional life, but I was not dealing with the things that were internally holding me back. And during this time, I had my daughter, um, and the first time I held her, I was like, my life is going to change. There was so much love there, um, and to be a father after all that I went through, I was like, I don't deserve this. Um, this is beautiful. I need to change things, but I didn't. I kept drinking, kept getting angrier. I kept putting off my past. And April 4th would come around every year, and that would just reignite those demons. Um, and it was hard. And I, thought I'd have having a family and a new job and a new career would fix all these things, and it didn't. I was adding more stress into my life, and I wasn't dealing with the stresses that were there from 10, 15 years ago. And I just became a shell of who I was. My wife and my daughter would be like, "Hey, let's go do this, or let's go visit family, or let's go down here." And I just didn't want to leave the house. And during this time, my mother is um, diagnosed with renal failure, so she's on dialysis, and you know she's trying to deal with that, and looking to her only son, her only family besides my stepfather, for support. And I had nothing to give her. I was so worried about myself, so worried about myself. um, then I had my son, another blessing, thinking maybe, Josh, this is it, man, you're finally going to turn it around. But I didn't. I was still trying to fill all these voids with things that I thought were going to fix me. More alcohol, more time in the basement, playing music, doing things for me, ignoring real life. And I think the reason I was ignoring real life is because I didn't want to get hurt anymore. I've been hurt so much from such a young age. I thought I was protecting myself. And I just start spiraling and spiraling deeper and deeper, running away from responsibilities. Again, professionally, I was doing great because I could put on that facade. But at home, in the quiet moments, I was not. I was fighting demons from so far ago, like so far along in my past. But I really wasn't. They would just resurface, and I would let them dig me deeper and deeper and deeper. And, um, during that time, I had lost friends that I served with. I started losing animals, like my dog. That was such a, I don't want to, it was such a great friend. Even though it's a dog, there was that support, that somebody that's not going to judge you, that's not going to harm you or cheat on you or steal from you or whatever it is. Something I was just happy to see you when you came home. and just sit next to you. But I was so blind to see that I had a family that wanted to do those same things. I didn't give them the opportunity to do that. Um, and then COVID hit, and another stressor that I didn't want to deal with. And during that time, you know, with my mom's battles with, the renal failure and then OCPD and then COVID, um, I lost my mother. And that to me was like, that was like the end. I was like, what pushed me over the edge. Um, I remember telling my wife, like, I can't keep doing this. I don't want to do this anymore. Um, and imagine how she felt. She had 2 kids, a husband who's sometimes there saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And I couldn't tell you the day. It was sometime in October, about 3 years ago. I'm sitting in this very basement with intrusive thoughts, just contemplating, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And like, in a moment of complete surrender, I just say, God, if you're there, I need you, because I can't keep doing this. I don't want to keep doing this. And I wish I could tell you there was this, sound of thunder or lightning or the lights went out, or none of that happened. But for the first time in 20 something years, I never feel alone. Something inside of me felt like it's like God was saying, I see you, Josh. I've been waiting for you to come home. And I walked out of that basement, and I go upstairs and I go to bed, and I wake up the next day and telling my wife, like, will you start going to church with me? Because I just felt like God was saying, I see you. And I wanted to see where that was going to take me. And during that process, we started attending church together. And my children were going to the kids ministry, and my wife was like, hey, we should start volunteering. And I wasn't comfortable with that yet. I was like, I'm still trying to figure things out. Then there was something in me that, it was like a nudge, like, a moment of clarity where you've been wanting to be there for your family. You've been wanting to be there for your kids. Why not this? So I decided yeah, sure, let's try it out. And I think part of me was scared because a room full of kids, that's chaos. And I'm trying to escape this chaos of my past that I haven't dealt with yet. So I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But God met me there. And those kids were great. Hundreds of kids just smiling and happy. And I think that's what I needed. I think that's what God was saying, is like, have the faith of a child. I walked away at such a young age that coming back, it made sense to be in children's ministry, because my faith was not mature. It's like I was starting over, even though the seeds were planted. They needed to be watered. So we started volunteering there, and this was about 3 years ago, and we haven't stopped. Not only during that process, I went to the VA and I started getting help for my PTSD, and I started getting help for some of the things that I was dealing with. Got on medications, and my mind started to slow down. I went to therapy. And I never would have done that if God didn't meet me in this basement, if I didn't come back to him in a moment of humility And, there's a lot of people who have stories like that. There's a lot of people who have experiences like that. There's a lot of people who are going through that exact thing right now. But it doesn't have, you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. And God is so good. For the longest time, I questioned it. If God is so good, why am I going through all of these things? I've went through all of this stuff since I was 2 years old. Didn't have a father, losing loved ones, medical issues, combat, post-traumatic stress, divorce. Really? Where's the love? But I look back now and I realize I wasn't alone. God was with me every single time. He's with you too, and he wants to be with you. I know it's hard to see now in the midst of your struggles, but there's a reason I went through those things. I didn't see it at the time, but I see it now. I was playing music for all the wrong reasons. Why do I have those gifts? Well, I see it now. Now I'm making music for all the right reasons. I'm good with creating things. I was creating them all for the wrong reasons in the past, but I'm doing them for the right reasons now. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing with this testimony right now. God is so good. And not only has my marriage improved and my time with my children gotten better, my past traumas have been, not only internalized, but reckoned with. I love those kiddos at church. I love getting invited to soccer games and birthday parties. And then I got into ministry because I felt like God was saying, man, look at all these past experiences that you have. There's so many people out there that are going to relate with what you've been through, and to be blessed with the opportunity to share my story and share how I came out on the other side through the grace of God. It's no better gift. So now I make music with my friend Aaron. We had a falling out during the midst of those troubled years that I had, but through the watering of those seeds I talked about earlier, I learned about reconciliation, and we're making music again. God turned something that I thought was completely dead, completely over, and he made it brand new. Not only that is like I said, with ministry, I'm doing that to the best of my ability. I'm no longer chasing more money or more promotions. I want to do what God is asking me to do. And he's asking me to be a calm voice, to be present for people, to share my stories and experiences. I don't have all the answers. I'm not the best theologian, but I'm here. And I think that's the reason why I wanted to do this channel and I wanted to share this, is because, man, look at what God can do. And he can do it for you. So if there's anybody out there that who maybe has experiences like I've had, or you think they would benefit from watching this, just to show them you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. Share it, because we all have a story to tell, and we all can come out on the other side. So I want to thank you for the time. If you're watching this, if you watch it later, I just want to thank you, and just know that you're not alone. And if you ever need somebody to talk to, just send me an email, send me a comment. You know, I'd love to hear your story. So pop this up here. Okay. So it doesn't look like anybody joined, that's cool because I was very vulnerable. um, and the reason I minimized that window is I didn't want to be so focused on that number. I wanted to be focused on the story. So thank you for your time. Have a great day.